welcome to the second episode of the DHL Greatness Series with me, Nicole Holiday, your host. In this episode, we delve into how diversity, inclusion and belonging in sport align with diversity, inclusion and belonging in the workplace. And I'm joined by some participants from DHL's partners across 3 different sports. So firstly, someone with a very successful sporting background who has represented her country in not just 1, but 2 sports. So currently playing for Harlequins and England Rugby, but she represented England in the 2014 Commonwealth Games in the hammer throw. It's Shaunagh Brown. Shaunagh, welcome. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Very tired. Just finished a long training week with England Rugby, but it's finished now, so all good.
Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. I feel like you've had a more stressful day than I have. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us. And we also have Nicki Shields, who alongside her ambassadorial work for the FIA's Girls on Track scheme, usually has the best seat in the house as she reports live from the pit lane at Formula E races. Nicki, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Nicole, there's no seats. No, I'm running around like an idiot. I definitely don't have the best seat in the house. Maybe close to the action. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be talking alongside Shaunagh and Annie.
I'm still incredibly jealous of you and your job. I feel like it's so cool. Finally, joining us from one of the world's most famous and successful football clubs, it's Manchester United's Director of HR, Annie Hale, who has also worked with prestigious brands in sport and technology. Annie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Very well, thanks, very well. Sadly not had such an exciting job as Nicki or as an exciting week as Shaunagh, but it is lovely to be here.
Amazing. Right, let's get straight into this because I'm really interested to hear all of your perspectives on this. Firstly, what inspired you? Shaunagh, we'll start with you. What inspired you to pursue a career in the sports industry?
So in the beginning, I wouldn't say I chose to pursue a career. It was just something to do. So I grew up with all my boy cousins. Like the only girl was my sister, who was a lot older than me. So I was purely just keeping up with my cousins who happened to be boys, and they're obviously running around like maniacs the whole time, climbing trees, running races, fighting. So it was just about me, like a sense of belonging with them. There was nobody, I don't know, doing makeup, doing their nails or whatever girls are supposed to do in quotation marks as young girls. But it was just keeping active, keeping out there, and growing up with a mum as a single parent who worked the whole time. And a lot of it was just about getting me out of the house, keeping me out of trouble, keeping me in the right place while she was at work. So actually, like, sport for me was just an outlet. And now, like, it's my whole life and my whole world is revolved around sport for the good. But yeah, it was never a career choice. And even as a woman, as so many of us know, so many women are still not professional. So actually it's not a career choice for so many. But now it's, yeah, something I enjoy, thriving and making a good life from it purely because of sport.
Probably feels like you didn't even make that decision as such to work in sport. It must have just felt completely natural and completely you.
Yeah, it's literally just about keeping active. And I get bored so easily so often. So it's just like, okay, what can I do now? And they asked me yesterday, actually, have you got ADHD? And I was like, no, not a chance. They're like, yeah, but you can't sit still. So that's just because I want to do things. It's like my mind is like fine and focused, but I just like to keep active, like to keep busy, and always like to think, well, what's next? I've achieved this thing. What's next? What can we do next?
Yeah. Okay, Nicki, what about you? What made you want to get into sport?
Yeah, it's so similar to Shaunagh, really. Like I just love motorsport, had a passion for it. It was always a hobby. I never in a million years thought I was going to work in the industry. Like my dad, my grandfathers on both sides of the family, total petrol heads, grew up kind of watching racing, going to races, doing go-karting, but it was a hobby. Like it was never a job. And I went off to uni. I then started working in broadcasting around sustainability and environmental projects and subjects. And and then I was doing like the odd bit of pit lane reporting at motorsport events, again, just for the love of it. And then, I kind of discovered doing a show. One of the features we did was about the future of electric cars, and in that show I had an interview. We went across to Renault and did an interview with them, and they told me about this new racing championship that they were involved in, Formula E, and it was going to be this sustainable, clean, green motorsport. And if I'm completely honest, at the time I was like, good luck, that sounds rubbish. because I was a petrol head. I like the roar of, you know, a noisy V10 engine. But actually I kind of went away and thought about it, and actually, you know, what Formula E stands for are my kind of two favorite things: my passion for working in the environment and my passion for motorsport. So the kind of two worlds collided, and then the rest is history, as they say. So I feel very, very, very lucky, you know, as Shaunagh is as well, to just work in an industry that you love and that you're passionate about, you know, so you never really feel like you have to go to work.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I can imagine at first when you decided you did want to kind of get into that industry, it's fair to say it's quite a male dominated industry. Did that
Yes.
kind of cross your mind, or scare you, or make you feel like it kind of maybe wasn't for you?
No, never really crossed my mind, to be honest. I never really thought about it. I mean, I suppose you kind of asked about it, you know, what's it like to work in a male dominated industry? But I never thought, oh, I'm going off to work in a male dominated industry. It was motorsport. It is what it is. You don't really think about it. Obviously, since then, I mean, that was probably 10 years ago. Since then, there's been a huge focus on it and a huge shift, and it is amazing to see. That, I mean, we can get into the detail of that in a bit, but there has been a huge amount of change, but there's a lot more to come. But I don't know if you want me to crack on talking about that now, or
we can delve into that later.
Yeah.
Annie, what inspired you to pursue a career within the sport industry then?
Well, I came at the role I have in sport through a slightly different kind of background. So you mentioned where I'd been working before, and the opportunity came up to work in Manchester United. And whilst I followed a lot of sport, actually, I'm from a city which is I'm from Worcester. So they, you know, don't want to put Worcester Football Club down too much, but you know, the you know, people that we sort of lived around and family, they were rugby and cricket down there. But actually, I've always understood the passion for sport, and I've always understood how it can connect people from different countries, you know, with different backgrounds, from, you know, different demographics, and actually it can bring people together as a force for good. And I've always loved that. But for me, I've worked in organisations because I work in HR. You know, a big part of my job has been trying to get people to love where they work. You know, we spend a lot of time, don't we, in our jobs? And so I've worked for some fantastic brands and some fantastic people. But I get offered this role to come and work somewhere where people love what they do. They absolutely love where they work. They feel passionate about what they do. They can see how what they do makes a difference. I think, gosh, you know, to work somewhere where that is absolutely there in droves and it's ingrained in people, it was an opportunity I just couldn't pass up. And, you know, I see it every day with the people I work alongside. They absolutely love the club, and they believe that what they can do will contribute to success, and it makes people incredibly passionate about what they do. So that was definitely the draw for me.
I mean, it's so important to love where you work, because I mean, like you just said, it's such a big part of our lives, isn't it? Nicki, what advice would you give to a young woman pursuing a career in the sports industry?
Gosh, I mean, so much advice. I think you've got to really want it. You've got to be really ambitious. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be served up to you on a plate. I would say you've got to just really go for it. Try and be as confident as you can, even if you don't necessarily feel you have the tools or the platform necessarily to give you that confidence. You just kind of got to back yourself, because no one else is going to do it for you. And just network, get as much experience as you possibly can. And that doesn't matter if that's, you know, doing, you know, for me, I guess it's kind of from a broadcast perspective, that could be, you know, doing radio at university, or, you know, just it could be in your bedroom, just practice, get experience, whatever it is, because ultimately it doesn't really matter if one person is watching it or 10 million people are watching it. You still have to have the same skill to do that. And I think just obviously be kind and be nice to everyone, because it's a very small industry and everybody knows everyone. So yeah, that's a sort of top level of the advice that I would say. But I think also set up your own little network. You know, I think with social media now, it's actually really easy to build a network, particularly, you know, from my experience in motorsport, going to certain tracks, everyone, it gets to know everyone, and it's amazing how opportunities come out. There's not going to be necessarily a job spec on the board, you know, it's probably going to come from a conversation that you have with a mate, with a contact at a racetrack. So it's, I suppose it's a difficult thing to break into, but also at the same time it's quite easy if you are really hungry for it. So I'd say, yeah, be hungry and don't give up. And you'll get that for sure.
Shaunagh, what advice would you give to a young woman who wants to get into sport or become an athlete like yourself?
Yeah, so similar to Nicki, I would suggest, like, it's the hard work, it's the extra hours you put in, it's putting yourself in the right place at the right time, it's potentially applying for jobs that you might not quite be up to standard for, but do it anyway because men do it all of the time. It's like the classic, there's 10 tick boxes, women will only tick 9 of them and think, oh, maybe I won't apply. A man will tick 2 boxes and think, oh, I'll have a go anyway. But also once you do make it, it's the accepting that you're there because of your hard work. Like, so often, and Nicki's already said it, we call ourselves lucky to be in these positions, but actually I'm going to guess, Nicki, you've worked hard for it. It's not luck. Like, you've not just sort of one day rocked up and said, well, can I have a go please, and that you've been lucky to be there. It's just appreciating how much work we put in, and don't be afraid to tell people as well. I think sometimes we're almost too humble and saying, like, oh, I think I'm quite good at the job I do. I think I'm quite good at rugby, like I'm not bad, or like I'm quite good at writing words down on a piece of paper. No, you're smashing it, like you're very good at it. So just sometimes show that off. And what I get a camp who will say to me, no, you're a bit too much, Shaunagh, like you're a bit too brash, you're a bit too out there, which is fine because they're not achieving the things that I'm achieving. But then you do get a more powerful group, I would suggest, that go, well, actually, I quite like her. Like, she knows what she's talking about. She believes what she's saying. She's strong in her mind. So, and that's what we want to work with. So it's just like being the type of person you want to be, but also learn the type of person you are, learn the type of people you need to be around to achieve, and equally learn the type of people you don't need to be around, people that are constantly bringing you down. And again, sometimes it's not malicious. People will say, oh, like, maybe just stick at the job you're doing, there's no need to go up. Like, you're quite happy, you get plenty of time off. And like, if you want to achieve more, you need to go out and achieve more, and you might need to silence the people that are telling you to settle. But equally, if you are a person, you are content where you are, like, that's fine. If you don't want to move up the career ladder, that's okay. But as long as that's what you want to do, because that's who you are, rather than other people either equally trying to drag you up if you don't want to go up there, but people trying to hold you back if you do want to accelerate. So just learn the person you are and work hard.
Oh, I feel like I want to take Shaunagh everywhere with me now. It's like my motivational coach. No,
I'm there. Such good advice, because also it's like I'm just sort of giving like, this is what you should do. It's very hard to take your own advice, and like, you know, I'm saying, like, yeah, be really confident, back yourself. I struggle doing that all the time. So there's always a voice in your head. You've always got to just keep pushing. It doesn't, you know, as you say, we're lucky to be in this position. Well, I said we're lucky. Yeah, you're not. We're not lucky. We've been working really hard, and you do have to. You have to keep pushing yourself, because otherwise you do start doubting yourself, and that's when I guess you don't necessarily achieve what you want to achieve.
See, I love the data that you used there, Shaunagh. Sorry to cut over you, but you know, talking about why women don't apply for certain roles, and they look for that, okay, I've got 9, but I'll wait until I've got that 10th one before I dare say something. And we've done a lot of work around gender pay gap. You know, why is it? What drives some of these differences between females getting into more senior roles? And actually, when you look at data, you see how well girls are doing in school, how well girls are doing their A-levels. And now actually looking at how well they do through university and into their first jobs, or, you know, whichever path they want to take. And you're seeing now a sort of a much more confident person getting into the workforce, taking the advice that you guys are saying. But I think where it's hard is actually as they get a bit further on, and then you have to sort of make some life choices. And actually it's taking that advice even into your later stages, where you should use that confidence to say, I am good and I can do this job in a different way and still be successful. Because I think we're getting better at that early career stuff, aren't we? But when we have to make life choices, I think we're not as good, because we almost apologize for trying to make choices and try to, you know, whether it's working parents, caring, whatever it's trying to be. And so I think it's just got to stay with you for your entire career, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And also what Shaunagh was saying earlier, like, I think there is a real thing of but not putting ourselves down, but kind of apologizing for things or saying, yeah, I'm really lucky to be here. I'm really grateful for this or that. And actually, yeah, you've worked really hard to get to that point, and you don't need to be so, I don't know, kind of apologetic or nice about it. You can also have that confidence and that belief and be like, yeah, I deserve this, and I'm actually good at what I do, and that's why I'm here. And I think maybe we lack that as well sometimes. If you could go back to when you were 18, what's the one piece of advice that you would give yourself, Shaunagh?
It would be along the lines of what I know now, in terms of knowing yourself, knowing what makes you tick, knowing what works for you, what doesn't work for you, and like knowing which environments you thrive in. And even it's like the music you listen to, like if you want to listen to a certain type of music, even if everybody else in the room doesn't want to listen to that, it's still okay to do your thing as well. And if you get into a team sport, and I say team sport, but it could be any team, whether it's a working team, a team at home in the family, you can still be an individual. Like, you don't have to fade into the background. You don't have to be this grey woman who sort of just plods along. But again, if you want to do that, that's fine. But I would suggest there's a lot more people who want more from themselves, and put yourself around people who are going to bring you up, because the amount of times, like, it takes a lot to empower somebody else. Like, for me, that's a very brave thing to do, is to empower somebody else to do it. Like, I will happily, when we're in a group meeting or a room, like, speak up because I'm good at that. But what's more powerful for me now, I'm at a stage where I want other people to talk. So actually, that's my stage of development, like getting other people to come up with me, because there's almost no point in me just rising to the top. Like, I need other people, and women especially, with me. So it'd be, learn the type of person that you are and like thrive off that.
Love that. Annie, what advice would you give your younger self?
I think you don't often in a career look back or stop and pause and look at achievements, do you? Or pat yourself on the back, which I think is what we're saying here. You don't take time, you don't pause, you're not that kind to yourself. You're always looking at the next thing, aren't you? And you know, there's a lot that's talked about nowadays about that growth mindset, you know, and there's a lot more understood about coaching and how mentoring can, you know, work to best benefit. And looking back now, it felt like sometimes like a hard slog. And even the successes you had, you didn't always sit back and celebrate them or recognize them, because perhaps it's just something about being female in a world where there's often, you know, people around you who aren't in the same boat, or, you know, especially early on, you know, in those management roles, you are probably the minority sort of gender there. And yeah, I don't think you're that kind to yourself coming through the ranks. It's only until a bit later on in life do you actually look back and go, crikey, it's been all right, actually. You know, so yeah, I think, you know, if you can give yourself a bit more reflection time and be a bit more grateful for what you have done, I think that's good practice, really.
Yeah, that is so true. I feel like I try and have this conversation actually quite often with my female friends, where we say, like, it's very easy to stress about where you're at or where the next job's coming from or this next sporting achievement, but we don't often go, oh wow, actually I've done X, Y, and Z, and that's really cool. And actually, that's really quite impressive from me. And I'm doing pretty well. All you do is kind of look for the next thing, or yeah. And I don't know, Nicki, why do we do that?
I don't know. It's that insecurity, isn't it, of always looking for the next thing. And you know, off the back of that, I think I would also say, just whatever you are doing, enjoy it. Be in the moment, savor that moment, because it might be the last time you're doing it. You know, hopefully it's not, but there, you know, there are so many different jobs and they're all varied and every day is different. So if you are doing something you're enjoying at the time, just really take time to, as you say, step back and just really enjoy that moment. Like I and do that before doing things like doing the live grid walk. That's one of my favorite things like ever, and I don't think I'll ever be able to beat that. I love that when the director in my ear is like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go, and then you're like on air for 15 minutes, you've got absolutely nothing planned, and you just God hope somebody speaks to you on the grid, otherwise you're going to look like a right lemon. But it's that I'm sort of now over the anxiety and the stress that brings, and instead I'm just like thriving on the enjoyment, because every time I do it I'm like, this might be the last time I do it, you never know, so I've got to just be in the moment and love it. And I think, but back to your sort of question, what would I actually say to my young self? I think the other thing is, back to that confidence, and no question is a stupid question, particularly I think in your earlier stages of your career. Ask all the stupid questions because you can, and also always give your opinion, or if you're in a meeting, it doesn't matter how senior the people are in that room, if you've got something to say, and most of the time everyone in that room does, but no one, but a lot of people won't be confident enough to put their hand up and say something. And remember, it's all just opinion. It's all, there's no wrong or right answer in so many of these things that we do. And, I'm embarrassed to almost admit it, I still sit in production meetings where it's pretty much, sometimes it's all men. And there are things that I want to say, but I'm not necessarily like, I'm not looked at, I don't get the eye contact, I don't feel like I'm sort of, I have my position at the table in the same way that others do, which is crazy. And therefore I don't speak up, and it's ridiculous that we can't do that, and we're not sitting all there as men and women on a level playing field, but it's still happening, even just every day in the job, which is mad. But the advice I would give is to speak up and say what you really think.
Well, so what more do you think that we can do to make sure sport is a place for all, whether it's being a participant or a spectator, Shaunagh?
I'd say there's loads of different angles from it. You could do it from the angle of a player, you could do it from the angle of staff, of a supporter, you could do it from the support staff and potentially like stadium staff, and even the people who organize a tournament in general. So it's just, think everyone's opinion is welcome, and yes, there's only a certain amount of voices you can hear, but you want as many different types of people in the room when making decisions as possible. And that's not necessarily just male or female, black or white. That's people who may have been adopted, may have grown up in a foster home, people who've come from single parent families, people who've come from marriage breakdowns. Like, it's just different types of opinions, people who are parents, people who are not married. So even when you think about timings, and I'm like, oh yeah, we can maybe go on holiday next week, and someone will say, but it's not half term, so you can't. But I don't have children, so I don't think about that angle. So you just need as many voices in the room, and just think, are we doing the same thing every year and expecting a different result? Are we just saying we want more women in these jobs, we want more people of an ethnic minority to come and watch our sports? And are you changing anything, or are you just saying it? Are you looking at what types of food you're serving? Are you looking at what, even like down to colors and just the bright colors and the welcoming, and just make something different? The music you're playing in the background, it's the how to get people in. Maybe you've got different people on the gate. Like, it's just so much thinking. Like 1, 2 or even 10 people can't do that much thinking, but we have to do it actively. We have to actively sometimes go out and get people. So I used to work in a fire service, and there's a certain groups of people who wouldn't interact with us because we were seen as an authority. And actually some people struggled with the fact that, well, they don't want our help, so that's it. Whereas I saw it as they need our help. We know they need our help, and actually we have to go out to them and educate them. Like, there is a part on us as an authority to go out and talk to people, and we can't just wait. Especially, we do have a problem in rugby with diversity, and so many clubs will say we welcome everyone, and rugby is a fantastic sport in terms of the types, so many different types of people you need to play a game, but they're so guilty of just saying we welcome everyone, but not actually doing anything about it. Just think about, where is the closest bus stop? Can you even get public transport there? Is there a walking route from a train station, from a bus stop? Like, do you need to have a car? what is our demographic of people around? Are we only looking in private schools, or are we going to the community schools? Like, are we going even younger to maybe get them younger? Are we going in girls' schools? So sometimes it's about just going out there and getting people, and not just sort of being set in your ways and thinking and saying, well, we welcome everyone, but not actually doing anything about it.
That's so true. I guess it's one thing to say we want to be more inclusive or more diverse, but you've got to change things and look at what you've been doing if you actually want that to change. Annie, is that something that I guess you're working on at Manchester United?
Yeah, so I think for us, certainly we've got over 1 billion followers. So, you know, we see very much that we have a role to play in having a voice. So it's not just about, you know, looking at our own sort of people, workforce players, you know, but we actually need to use our platform in a really positive way. So I think that's the first thing. So we put, you know, quite a lot of, whether it's funding, effort, you know, people behind the campaigning that we do every year to make sure we've got a voice. I don't think that it's acceptable now that any company, definitely not any sports practice, can sit on the fence with a view. I think everyone has to have a view now. And it's important that we're kind of loud and clear about what that view and position is. And we should be, you know, rightly proud of where we sit on certain matters. I think the other thing is that we're really trying to work on is, you know, yes, there's a lot that we can do, and I echo everything that Shaun is talking about. You know, it's sort of breaking down the actions, the sort of the very sensible actions you can take to make a difference. One of the things that we really focus on as well is youth. So it's a big part of our DNA is the sort of development of youth. And when we translate that sort of through, we're doing a load of work with our sort of communities and you know, grassroots football is really important to people. There's a diverse following of football. And we've got a huge sort of charity in the foundation that does a load of work with schools and really helps sort of families. When we had COVID, we sort of turned to making food and sort of sending that out to communities who are struggling. We can always do something to help different groups who to try and pull people into football. And I said at the start, you know, one of the wonderful things about sport is it cuts across, you know, different countries, it cuts across languages, it cuts across religion, doesn't it? But for us as well, we are looking at programs for young people to bring in a much more diverse group of people working for us. And that's having real success. So when we're very deliberate about programs, saying, look, we really want to have a certain percentage of this program as with diversity. And that creates it creates different voice, it makes that inclusive culture. The final thing I'd say, though, that's really important to us and very topical because of the Women's Euros at the moment, but how fantastic is it when we as a country get behind women's sport? You know, and there's really good reason to get behind it. It's been fantastic watching it. So, you know, we really have to be thoughtful about getting behind different sporting groups, whether that's our youth teams, whether that's our women's teams, as well as the men's teams. And you can see in sport where they started to do that earlier on, you know, women's tennis is a great example. They're so much further on, aren't they? But there's still work to do, but we've got the sort of the power, if you like, to get behind that. And we really need to do that. So where we can as an organisation, where others can, we really need to do that.
And there is also such an appetite for women's sport, like as we're seeing, like you're talking about there, the Women's Euros, like people are interested, people care, people do want to watch it. We need to just make it more accessible and also promote it more, advertise it more, because if you can't see it, there's the quote that everyone likes to use, you've got to see it to be it, or something like that. I'm absolutely slaughtering the quote, but it's very true though. You know, if you don't grow up seeing women playing football or rugby or pit lane reporting, you won't ever think that you can do it yourself. So that's such a key point. I'm quite curious to know, how often do you kind of discuss diversity, inclusion and belonging within your teams, Shaunagh?
That's a good question. So around the uprising of the Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd dying, it was spoken about a lot, and it seemed like rugby especially wanted to do a lot about it. And that's when I come back to people saying, well, we welcome everyone here. We would like to change the demographic of our of our players, of our staff, of our spectators, but not actually doing much about it. For me, that time was at a place of learning for me as a person, and I learned a lot about myself, but also who I wanted to be and who I wanted other people to see me as. So like these issues around diversity, I'm very strong and passionate on, and I can give things on how to make it better. But I've always been that person. But until about 3 years ago, you probably wouldn't have known that because I didn't project it on the outside. So it was for me just being a bit more vocal with it and learning from like what I could do more of. But yeah, so much more can be done, and it's not just the talking about it, it's the action of it. But now again, we're at a time where it's died off again because it's like not at the forefront of our news, and so much comes and goes, and so many issues pop up and down around different, I guess, aspects of diversity. I feel like it's been put in the back seat again, and not talking about it enough.
Annie, how much do you guys talk about it in your workplace?
Yeah, a lot. So we've spent quite a lot of time on sort of education and data capturing, and so it's really part of our DNA. And it's great where you see it's not an HR thing. It's not it's not sort of owned by the head of diversity. It's part of all of our DNA, and I think that's a big sign of success. There's loads more we need to do, and I think what's interesting is that we've certainly started to move much further away from sort of the sort of more typical characteristics of diversity, and instead there's two things that we talk about more. So the first is actually just creating that, just an environment where people can come to work and be who they are, and be the best person they can be. And it's what sport's all about, isn't it? And so I think making sure we can create an environment for that, whether you're on pitch or off pitch, is really important. The second thing is then to sort of get there is having a far greater understanding about what makes us different. So, getting data is, I think education and data is the sort of foundation of sort of how you sort of start this work. And but trying to get hold of better data around people's backgrounds, people's, where were people educated, what makes them who they are, so that we can understand more about how to get that sort of environment and that culture. If that's sort of our North Star, then, we have to sort of think hard about how we get there. And I'm a big believer in data helping us to do that, but also better conversations and things like today, us talking about it. And I've learned a lot from my sort of co-panel here today, and I think we just need to listen better, don't we?
So Nicki, what are some of the core values and ways that we can create an environment that's diverse, inclusive and welcoming?
The one way that I can speak from experience, and that I really hope this is going to guarantee a diverse and inclusive environment in the future, is I work really closely with Girls on Track, which is an initiative from a grassroots level to get girls involved in motorsport. We host events, they can come down, practice being a pit lane reporter, meet drivers, teams, meet engineers, change a wheel, learn about the sport, see it. And that's what it comes back to. They can see it all and they can believe that they can be it. And I think that is the most important, that we have to give at a grassroots level opportunity to those that don't necessarily have, whatever the reason is, they don't have the access to get it without the support. So that needs obviously financial backing, educational backing. It's a long-term project. A random thing here and there isn't going to make any difference. This needs to be, a 10, 20-year plan, and then we'll start to see a difference. Fingers crossed.
Sounds amazing. I feel like I would have loved that when I was younger, but also, I don't know about you guys, but I know at school I kind of wasn't really encouraged to play sport, really. It was kind of like the guys play football and the girls sometimes do netball or just don't really have to do anything. So seeing initiatives and things like that are really cool. I think it's amazing. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for. We hope you enjoyed hearing a little bit more about the importance of diversity, inclusion and belonging in building team culture both on and off the field. Thank you so much to our guests, Shaunagh, Nicki and Annie. That has been so interesting. And thank you to DHL for having us. And we hope to see you all again very soon for the next instalment of the DHL Greatness Series.